All right, you were listening to the Battle Ready podcast. My name is Aaron McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus.
Hey, buddy, it's good to see you. We just did an episode without you.
I know. Okay, so maybe I should just start it this way and just get the introduction done that I need to do for your podcast with Joe Smith. So I have been waiting on a delivery for like 3 days, and it's at my house, and I had to be at my house to get it, and it has thrown off the entire week. Well, Monday was a holiday.
Well, you know what people say? No one is irreplaceable.
People say that? People say that. I am your son. You cannot replace me.
Well, Joe Smith did an excellent job.
So I get a text. From Austin saying, "Hey, by the way, we did a bunch of content for your dad. We did a bunch of TikTok and IG Reel, and we've gotten all the lists done that you've kind of sent. And also, by the way, we just did a podcast with Joe Smith, and I don't think we need you this week. We can just release this on the podcast." And I was like, heck no, forget the package. I'm getting in the car. Drove over here, and now I'm here. But reclaiming the throne.
What happened was that we were just talking about the masterminds that we just hosted. And yeah, it was amazing. And then I said to Joe, hey, what were some of the insights? Did you get any insights from our time together? He goes, oh, so many. And he just lit up. His eyes lit up. And I said, wait. We need to record this. So it was very spontaneous. Good. It wasn't like we didn't plan to replace you.
Okay.
This wasn't exactly like Succession.
Okay.
But the son did not get
Succession.
The inheritance.
Succession.
Yeah.
I kept calling it Secession. And then Paulo was like, one of your best friends was like, what? I was like, Succession? He's like, Secession? How are you supposed to say
Secession.
It? Huh?
Right?
Secession.
Secession.
It sounds like a sushi. Secession.
Yeah.
Succession.
No. Secession.
Say sandwich. Come at me.
There are words I cannot say because I am an immigrant, and that is just completely not politically correct to make fun of a person who has refined English and my accents.
You must be exhausted because I don't know if people know this, but I will probably release the Joe's. Well, maybe we'll release this both on the same day. I don't know.
I think so.
Maybe we'll do a battle, Joe versus Aaron.
I think
Who's
we should.
No,
we don't want to do
better.
that.
Joe's better.
No.
I'm not gonna lie.
And we
Joe's better all around.
We'll start with this one. Then we'll slide into the Joe Smith section, and maybe slide back into the finish of this one.
Well, what I think we should do is we should release this one and then release me with you and Joe, but where I'm like Twitch streaming it, like pausing it, and then giving my 2 cents, and then rewinding it, and then letting it go.
Well, you can join us on TikTok.
Okay. So what
right.
If people are just catching up with us right now?
Yes.
We launched the Art of Communication last year, spring of last year. It's been 1 year. It's our anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Okay. We've had hundreds and hundreds of people join this community from around the world, and it was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave us this idea. We need to build a community of communicators globally that can access a community month to month, every single month, every week, and get new content, new ideas, jump in the arena where you break down people's messages and destroy them and build them back up into greatness and have self-mastery of their content. But before that, we started a consulting business, kind of along the lines of Art of Communication, but building kind of on 3 different pillars of communication, leadership, and character. And it's really phenomenal to watch you go one-on-one with these incredible people. And what you did is you opened up a second tier. You invited all of the one-on-one consulting that you do into this second tier that I'm a part of. It's,
It's not a second tier.
Not a second. No, I'm saying it like a second stage.
Yes.
Not like second tier is in, B.
Yes.
Just, one and then another one. 1.1.
Yeah.
No, but basically you opened up to more of a group setting.
Yes.
So this space where people who were a part of the one-on-one coaching could be together.
Yes.
And basically do a mastermind summit situation. And so all these people flew in from around the world, and it was phenomenal. So basically it's not second tier. Basically you brought the one-on-ones into a summit and called a mastermind and invited some other people, and you kept it pretty relatively small.
Yeah.
And you taught on not a new concept, but a re-envisioned concept that you've had for 2 decades now.
Yeah, I walked them through this concept that I call the character matrix, but the reason it's different is that the environment changes the content.
Right.
Like, and so the core principles are the same, but how you apply that's different. And so it has a dynamic every single time you teach it.
Wait, the environment changes the content? That's so good.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just like coral in the ocean. The environment shapes the coral, and the coral transforms the environment. And I think great principles are like that. You can study the same principles all your life, and they change the way they express themselves and the application of it based on your stage of life and the context you're in. It's pretty amazing. Which is why when somebody says, "Oh, I've already heard this," or "I know this already," I'm like, "All right, you know this. Let's apply it."
Okay.
And let's apply it in this moment in your life right now.
Right.
And it's like saying, "Oh, I already know to be humble." Well, it's not whether you know to be humble. It's where does that humility need to be applied in this moment in your life right now?
Okay.
That's where the rubber hits the road. That's where the genius happens.
So one thing that I found really interesting in the mastermind, I mean, one that's phenomenal, talking about the environment changes the content. Because you've had this content, you wrote it in a book, and you've kind of extracted it and really, not redeveloped it, but you've changed a few things and kind of modified the way that you're communicating into this environment. So to be a fly on the wall, to be a part of the team putting this on, but also to be, your partner and to, the junior partner, I'm junior partner, associate in life, but in all these projects, it's really fascinating to watch how you interact with these guys. One thing that I thought was really unique was that you took business guys and made it entirely about character.
Yes.
You took guys who their primary, the sea that they swim in is how to turn a profit, the bottom line, how to cut costs, how to expand, scale, and grow. And most people in the mastermind, masterclass course world really talk about scalability.
Yeah.
And scalability is, I mean, even our good friend Dan Bolton, this is a shout out, his company is scalability.com. He helps you scale companies, and it's incredible. But really, you've kind of taken a new approach going, okay, there's guys like Dan in the world who can help you scale. There's guys like Ken Clothier in the world who will help you develop real estate portfolios. There's guys like Joel Marion who will help you surround yourself with other guys who are worth $100 million and can develop that. But you really went, okay, let me level everyone's ego. Let me level everyone's net worth. And let's start with the core value of character.
Yeah, because when you are dealing with scalability, you'd better start paying attention to sustainability. And most people who are highly focused on scaling are really oftentimes blind to sustaining.
Right.
And it's just, even when you're dealing with the environment, you can. I remember when I was young and I would drive through North Carolina through Canton, and you could smell the city of Canton from miles away because of all the sulfur and all the pollution. And this beautiful, pristine section of the Blue Ridge Parkway was being destroyed because they were only working on scalability, making more money rather than sustainability, creating an environment where the beautiful, pristine mountains and rivers are protected. It's the same way with you and me as a person. You can work on scalability all your life. You're going to become more successful, more famous, more powerful. You're going to get all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you're not dealing with sustainability. Your soul is polluted, and your character is getting, tainted and messed up, and you can't sustain what you don't invest in and protect.
And, when we were having the preliminary conversations going into the mastermind, we sat down and we were talking about, what content should you go through, given you're a master of content and a master communicator. So when you open up the door going, okay, what should I talk about? I jump right in. and I thought we had initially, I was pitching a different idea. I was like, oh, we should go the soul cravings, intimacy, meaning destiny route. And really you took it,
which I did with the second one near the end.
You did. You did talk about it. But really, and that's where those are your intrinsic core values.
Yeah.
But we were talking about this kind of offline, that it takes communication to build something initially, right? And you can survive on being a good communicator, having a lot of charisma and engaging people in sales and structure and scalability and scaling a company. And you can be a good leader. Right. You have to have leadership to keep going and to drive the thing, but you can survive. Your leadership can survive on charisma. It can survive on your great communication. It can even survive amidst, anger or frustration or toxic work environment. But if you don't have character, it's the crux of the other three. If you don't have character, you'll never sustain the other things.
Yeah, eventually
won't
it
matter.
begins to collapse.
Yeah, it won't matter how good your communication is or how great of a leader you are. If you don't have character, it will all collapse.
Yeah.
And we're in the middle of an era of a generation or era of time. Era? We're in the middle of an era?
Yeah, middle of an era.
Yeah, we're in the middle of an era where if you don't have character, you implode. And with phones everywhere and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and exposés and reality TV shows, it feels like people fall apart faster than they ever have before.
Yeah, or they cause their entire worlds to fall apart.
So why is character so important to you? And then and we don't have to get into character. I want to get into wisdom. Sorry, let me ask that again.
But I want to give you a perfect example of the process of humility and character. Where one business guy, he runs this great company. I've taught this material to all of his executives over 3 different sessions and even an all-day live session.
Right.
And then he comes to the mastermind on Monday, Tuesday, and I said, hey, I'm going to cover the same content I just covered in your company for 3 months. He goes, that's okay. Every time I learn something new. And so he comes for the whole 2 days. And then he ends up coming all day Friday and Saturday. Yeah. And I said to him, hey, we're going to cover the same content. And he said, doing it again. Great, I get to listen to it again.
Yeah.
I'll get so much more. At the same time, I have someone else who's also my friend going, I've already heard this. He doesn't even know fully where it's going to go, but he goes, I already know this, so I've already heard it. So, and I understood. It's like, when they go, I already know this. It's like, what that means is that you don't think that the dynamic of it's going to happen with a different 12 people in the room.
Right.
And it's really a posture.
Mm-hmm.
And can you keep learning? Can you keep growing? Can you take a principle and keep burrowing deeper into your soul?
Mm.
Or do you always have to have something new because it's really more about being entertained than it is being transformed?
And talking about being transformed, you made this statement, and I was listening in the back, and you said it is easier to become smart than to become wise.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us?
Because, I had a room, both these rooms, at one of them I said, you're maybe the smartest room, the most intelligent room I've brought together, but you're not necessarily wise. And because one of the things that happens is that intelligence can almost override wisdom. People think you're wise because you're smart. And you can outsmart a lack of wisdom. But when you're running on your intelligence without wisdom, it's like running down a mountain and having an avalanche behind you trying to catch up. And you are running hard, but you never took care of the wise part. So you just keep making choices where the avalanche gets worse and more powerful and more powerful. And before it, you know what? You are covered in deep snow. And because of the choices you've made. And one of the hardest things in the world is to realize, wow, this other guy is not nearly as smart as me. He's not as intelligent, doesn't have my IQ, but he's so wise. And that if I would just humble myself and learn from this person, I could glean so much insight to how to live a more whole life. I did a little survey. I've done it for years. I asked people to imagine the wisest person they know. And then I asked them, is the wisest person you know the most educated person you know? Usually about 1%. So I said, so you can be highly educated and wise, but it's probably rare. And then I ask them, is that person the wealthiest person you know? And that's usually about 1%. Okay, so the wisest person can be the wealthiest person, but that's also very rare. I said, now, the person that you imagine to be the wealthiest person in the room, are they the person that you would go to for relationship advice? Because they seem to be able to create relational health. And 99% of the room raises their hands. You can't always define wisdom. You can always identify it. And it's like, I don't know what makes a person wise. I know what wisdom looks like. And I find it's really odd right now. Somebody's telling me about, they paid $100,000 to have this woman who's a marriage expert come into their event to talk about how to have great relationships in marriage. And she's never been married, and she's never had a sustained relationship with a man in her entire life.
Or a woman or anyone?
Anyone.
No, okay.
No one.
Okay.
And when they said, wait a minute, And in fact, the guy paid her $100,000.
But he never Googled her? He never asked?
His partner wanted to bring her in.
Okay.
And so that's why they brought her in.
Okay.
And then they said to her, wait a minute, how are you the marriage expert, the relationship expert, when somebody began asking her, have you ever been married? No. Have you ever had a long-term relationship? No.
Man, I could do this.
And
pay me $100,000. I'll tell you all the reasons why.
And when she started asking all these questions, the person asked her said, it's really obvious you've never been married. And it's really obvious you've never had a healthy, sustained relationship. You know what her answer was? I'm like Phil Jackson. I can't play basketball, but I can coach it.
But Phil could play. Phil just couldn't play anymore.
Yeah.
No. I don't like that. Okay, finish the statement. You can outsmart a lack of wisdom, but you can't
outrun it.
Ooh.
It will catch up with you eventually.
Wait, can you say the statement and keep going?
Yeah. You can outsmart a lack of wisdom, but you cannot outrun it. Because eventually the avalanche you're creating from lack of wisdom will catch up with you.
Okay, talking about avalanches, I have never been in an avalanche, but I have been completely submerged inside of snow.
That would be terrifying.
And I remember I think it was 10 years ago, you had tickets to Sundance.
Yes,
which
that's
is
right.
in Park City, and it's a film festival in Los Angeles. And I was a film student, and I had just gone out of college, and I was working for you, and you offered it to me and the editor that was working for you as well. I guess the OG Austin St. John. And his name was Stephen Yao. And you're like, hey guys, like I have 2 tickets. I have a bunch of movies.
And we love Stephen Yao.
Yeah, we love Stephen Yao. He's editing films now. We love him. And you guys should just go and take my tickets, go see a bunch of movies, call it work, whatever. And I was like, yes, let's go. So we flew up to Park City, drove up to Park City. And the last day of the festival, we were like, let's go skiing. We've watched so many movies. We can't do this anymore. Let's go skiing. So we skied and it was empty. And we had downloaded the little app and we had done something like 60 runs in a day because the mountain was completely empty and it was just dumping snow. And it had dumped snow the entire night before, which is like the best thing to wake up to because you're like, it's all gonna be powder, it's gonna be fresh. And we were going down this like black diamond and he's on a snowboard, I'm on a ski. And he's much more advanced than I am. And we get to the bottom and he just starts taking off. And if you know anything about snowboards have, a larger plane or base, right? So he's able to sit on top of the powder a bit easier. And he's maybe 50 yards ahead, maybe like 40 yards ahead. He's far enough ahead where he's having to yell back and he's like waving his arms and yelling as he's like gliding across this like bottom of a black diamond. And it was fun because you're going super fast down this black diamond at the end and you're like, this is an open field and I'm just gonna shoot across it. And what he was saying is, don't fall. And I'm like, yeah, no, yeah, of course. Don't fall. And I'm like, yeah, of course, don't fall. And as the moment that I'm looking at, I'm trying to figure out what he's meaning. What he was trying to say is that it's super deep and it looks like it's flat. Don't fall. Because he can see that there's 2 other guys off in the distance that have like dug their skis in and went under. So
my gosh.
Yeah. And so the moment he says it, I take my mind off of it. I'm not paying attention. And I just dipped my skis in and literally like a cartoon just went deep inside of this thing and I fall out of my skis and I'm completely submerged in snow. And though it wasn't as dramatic as an avalanche, I remember sitting there going, I feel helpless. I'm trapped. My arms are like stuck. Snow's packed in around me. And I'm like having to like, do the thing. You get your poles out, you start scraping everything around you, creating space for your face and like literally climbing your body out. But I couldn't get out because my skis were stuck underneath and I couldn't get back on my skis. And every time I did it, my skis would literally sink because it's one thing to have momentum across a flat plane, but another thing to just sit on top of fluffy snow.
How did you get out?
He literally had to come.
Oh, so he came back?
He literally trudged all the way back, pulled me back out, and then we just walked all the way across this huge field. And it was one of the interesting like metaphorical moments of my life, realizing that, you can try to escape it, but you can't outrun it. And you have to pay attention and make sure you're not just this little gnat that keeps driving me crazy.
But that's because without wisdom, you don't have a foundation.
Right.
And it's like snow that looks like it's solid, but it's just waiting for you to make the smallest mistake and it just swallows you up alive.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talked about in that group setting was, well, we actually never even got it in the second iteration of it, I just gave up. Redirected, moved in a different direction.
Right.
But that the only thing that actually develops wisdom is perseverance. It's endurance. It's going through the gauntlet. It's not experiencing the pain. Pain does not make you wiser. And you
would think so.
You would think so, but we have proof. In fact, one of the great conversations, and that was one of the things we had to talk about, was someone was asking, or making a statement that you have to hit the bottom to learn. And I would say I've spent my life trying to help people not hit the bottom to learn. That for me, even as a dad, it's like when your kid has to hit the bottom, that's when it's really painful.
Yeah, but I had a bad moment last night. Can we talk about that? You want to talk about that?
You had a bad moment.
Well, one thing we talk about, no, you talk about being responsible for making sure that people don't get to the bottom.
Yeah.
But you talk a lot about this idea of human agency.
Yes.
And you talked about it in the mastermind, and you've talked about it with me.
I'm going to talk about it
life.
a lot more.
And human agency is this idea where you take responsibility for your own life.
Yes.
But why is human agency so important?
Because when you lack human agency, you become a victim.
Human agency is so important. Why? Can you do that?
Human agency is important because otherwise you become a victim. You live life passively and let things happen to you rather than make things happen. It's the whole idea of, today is going to be a good day, as opposed to I'm going to make today a good day.
I love that idea. I love that concept.
Yeah. And
what happens when it's just not a good day? Like we were talking about this last night because I came over.
There's a good lesson.
Because I came over the house. You had just gone back from out of town, which you're an amazing husband because, you worked yourself. I think we worked like 90 hours. We worked like 80 to 90 hours in just those 4 days.
Yeah. We went triple digits.
It was wild.
Yeah. Definitely over 100 hours.
We were still doing stuff on Wednesday and Thursday, and then Saturday. We worked Saturday, and then we were back at Mosaic on Sunday.
Yeah.
But last night I was on edge. I was edgy. I don't know if I had eaten enough. Austin had told me in the middle of the day, "You need to eat." I think you're a little edgy. And some stuff had happened, and work was crazy, and Austin had come over, and we were getting stuff done. And shout out to Austin and our entire team of me and Austin. and
is that what you're saying? You need to take your team on vacation?
Well, I came over. We grilled some steaks, and you were like, "Let's watch Succession." And then I don't know. Me and Mom got into it about some documentary I didn't want to watch, and then you just, when you fight with your mom, it just isn't okay. So then we're fighting, but we fight. We kind of have a hostile relationship where we love each other, and we're kind of the same person. And then I kind of snapped at you a little bit, and I knew that my little snap at you was like not okay. I knew it had hurt you, and it was small, but I was just rude. I wasn't so much like hurtful with my words. It was rude in the way I said it. I got home and I was like, "Brick, I did this whole day without offending anyone other than Austin." Austin I can live with because he's got to deal with me. But I'm like, and I texted you that night. I said, sometimes I just don't want to leave the house out of fear for just ruining someone's day. And I said, I don't know how to change. I'm trying to change, and I don't know how to change. And sometimes you give up on me and you just stop trying to help me change. Because I think you're just like, man, this is just who he is. I can't help him any longer. But I say no to that. So how do you take agency over your life?
Yeah, the way you take agency of your life is you stop caring about it when it's big, and you start caring about it when it's small.
Can you just unwrap that a little bit more?
Yeah, like when I was in college, I was a really dangerous person verbally. I have a fairly fast mind, and I would just cut people to shreds. I was hilarious. I was so funny, always at your expense. And then if I got into a relationship with another cutter, person who just loves cutting you down, we would just nonstop. That was our whole friendship, our whole relationship. We'd just demean each other, talk each other down, and I began to realize, because in college is when I became a person of faith, and I began to realize that being smart and being quick and being jaded and being sharp and cutting, I thought made me smarter more powerful,
Mm.
more compelling. And I realized all it did was use my words to destroy rather than to create.
Mm.
So I made a decision in my life that I was going to take 100% mastery over my words. And I would not allow hurtful things to come out of my mouth, even if I was just joking. So because it was so big in my life, I didn't let myself even joke about it.
You almost never make jokes at other people's expenses.
Yeah,
You make them at mine sometimes from the platform, which was amazing because we're in this mastermind, the first session. So I'm like, okay, this is going to set the precedence for the way the rest of this week flows. You know, the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. And then we're 5 stories in. I'm like, this guy, he is airing out some private moments with this crew. And it's all, Aaron did this the other day. Aaron did this when he was 12. And Aaron did this when he was 32.
I make you the hero.
You do not, sir.
But the hero has what's called the crisis moment.
The crisis, yeah, that's that. My 20s and 30s have been the crisis moment. But you also, and then you look back at me in the background. You're like, "Hey, Aaron, can I get your permission?" And I was like, "Yeah, now you want my permission?"
I gave you a chance to tap out fast. But
you said no. Wait, hold on.
Yes. No, what I'm saying, if you see you have something you want to change.
Well, you talk about cause and effect and how
Yeah.
to connect the dots between the cause and effect in the moments where you lack wisdom.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this situation.
Yeah, but you have to micro it. You have to be granular. You have to go, if I want to change this big thing in my life, I have to be ruthless in the granular level. And so I became a person that wouldn't joke about anybody else, that wouldn't be sarcastic, that wouldn't demean anyone. I only spoke positive, and I replaced them. I spoke positive words. I would be affirming. I would use my words to create and encourage and heal. And I can say my whole ability to communicate with people went 180 degrees. I changed dramatically to a person who would go, man, that guy's witty, to that's the kindest person I know.
Was there a person in your life that emulated those characteristics? Or what made you aware that maybe you were cutting?
I was brand new in my faith. I was at this at the house of this guy named Bob Weatherly. He was a pastor, but I was there with his family and a bunch of people he invited to his house. And I started asking him all these questions about God and life and science and probably I had a need to outsmart him. And I asked him a question he just couldn't answer, and it was so obvious that my question was a little smarter than his answer. And he looked at me and he goes, Erwin, I'm just never going to be as smart as you. He's probably 20 years older than me. I was 20 years old. And he said, I don't know how to answer that question. All I know is that I love you and that Jesus has changed my life and that I love him. And it cut me so deep. And I remember leaving it and I thought, okay, if there were 2 people in the world, I would rather be him. And so I took that moment and I just took it as a learning moment in my life. And I said, he was the most loving human being maybe I've ever known. And I said, I'm going to be loving like him. So I would just anchor myself on a person, sometimes that I hurt, someone that exposed me because they were just better human beings than me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very visceral memory for you. I don't think you've ever shared that with me. In your entire
No, and I still remember, I see it. I am there. I feel it. And I made a decision that I want to be like this man. And I don't need to be the smartest person in the room, but I need to be the kindest person in the room.
Wow.
And I'll let the smart part take care of itself.
You're usually the smartest person in the room, which I've found to be very true. And we bookend it. You tend to be the smartest person. I tend to be the guy who's like, how did I get here? This is nepotism. I just was born. And I'm really grateful that you talk about this incredible concept about connecting the dots between cause and effect, between how to change something in a granular way, in a micro way, connecting the dots, going, okay, if I want to speak kindly, one, I think you have to speak kindly to yourself. You have to believe kind and good things about yourself.
You can't be kinder to other people than you are to yourself. And there are times, you struggle with being kind.
Oh, I mean, it's that's the Everest. That's my Everest.
But I always know that when you're struggling to be kind for someone else, it's because you're being so cruel to yourself.
Yes.
And when you're kind to yourself, you're kind to others. And that's why it's like you see, it's granular.
Hmm.
It starts in your private space. It's how you talk to yourself, and it's how you talk to yourself about others.
Right.
It all starts in this inner world. And when you begin to change this world, it begins to change on the outside.
Yeah.
Like, when I know I'm in trouble, when I'm so mad or so frustrated or so tired that I start thinking negative thoughts about other people.
Oh no, I got to be the top of that list.
No, you're not.
It's like, my son Aaron, my goodness, I need to change my location. I need to move and never let him come find me.
No, the moment I let my inner world start floating in a negative direction, I know I'm in trouble.
Wow.
And so I fight it there first. And the thing is, because I win that battle internally, no one really experiences the damage of that externally.
Wow.
Yeah. I would say that maybe, I'm going to say it's going to be less than 10 times in the last 45 years that I've said something that I regretted saying.
I'm like trying to think about the meme that you said to me the last day. Yeah, you almost never, because I think and maybe this has to do with intention, right? And I think the beginning of speaking good things to other people and being kinder with your words really does start with being kind to yourself. But I think also it maybe moves into intention, the direction in which your words move, and the intent, and with what intention do they move. But I know you to be a good person with good intentions. You're almost great intentions. You have better intentions for me than almost anybody else in the world. And you have better intentions for people than they almost have themselves, which I think has been a really hard thing for you, because people will come in and be in your presence and do a few years with you in life and almost struggle with this idea, because you'll want a world bigger than, you'll imagine a world bigger for them than they even can imagine for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's how do you ground your ability to have such good intentions for other people?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I have to remind myself, I think it's an arrogant posture to go, I need to speak my truth. Like, that's a big cultural thing. Like, I need to speak my truth. That's the most narcissistic thing that I think people say about truth. I don't need to speak my truth. I need to speak the truth that makes you better.
Okay.
That makes the world better.
Okay.
Because otherwise, speaking my truth, I'm just vomiting on people. I need to speak my truth. Why do I need to do that? What is so wrong with me? I need to speak my truth. I need to live my truth. And so I don't see words as something that are a cathartic experience for me. I'm not speaking my truth so I can feel better. I am trying to speak a truth that helps you be better, that makes your life better. And so I think intention, when you talk about that, is like an important starting point. Like, what is the intention of your words? What are the intention of things you say? And I really want my words to bring life to people. I want my words to always make a person better. I want my words to make the world better. So I am sometimes you tell me, hey, Dad, on Instagram or TikTok, just flow, like, just don't be filtered or don't think through what you say. But I've just trained myself to have deep filters so that I would never say something that would hurt another human being unintentionally.
You also brought up this, that's such a great thing. So you talk, we've talked about human agency and this idea of the cause and the effect of our choices and our behavior. I remember, I feel comfortable saying the name now. So I dated this girl named Sammy Clark, who was awesome.
Yeah.
And I was awful. And we sat down after we broke up, and we were still trying to be friends, and that's almost impossible. And she was really kind, and we sat down and had like an exit interview, one of those things. and she is now incredibly successful. Do you ever see her on Instagram?
Yeah, she's amazing.
Amazing. And she's like a huge company called Form Athletics, or just Form, and she has like a huge community of like people who use her workouts and use her like menus and her cooking classes and all the things. And one of the things that she said to me when we sat down, she was
so
like,
this is a shout out to Sammy Clark.
This is shout out to Sammy Clark. She shout out to Sammy Clark, and we had this conversation, and she was like, hey, I know that you want to be great. she's like, what do you want, Aaron, in life? And I remember, you know, and like she was a couple years younger than me, 2 years younger than me, and I'm going, I'm the wise one here, you know. And she sat me down and she's like, I know you want to be great, but can you not be kind and great?
I remember when she said that to you.
And I like, have I ever known? I mean, God has spoken through you into my life so many times, but God really used that girl to speak into my life. And I was in New York, and I think she was doing an event in New York, so I just kept getting all these ads on Instagram to like join her with her workout, join her with. I'm like, I think that's the wrong targeted ads. I don't think she would want me going to her workout. But you know, but I think she's now like long engaged and been married and all these things. She's wonderful. But I remember thinking, oh wow, like so much of my success has been connected to you, and you're great and you are kind, and I think in my journey of being individually great, a huge missing piece has been kindness.
Yeah.
And I remember that conversation really marked me, because I think that year I made kindness that word of my year, and I realized that I needed it again and again and again.
That's a good word for the decade.
It's a good word for the decade, but really to have this like mastery over my kindness and my ability to be kind. And that it needs to be this thing that is, I didn't get it, to that. For it to be this thing that is continually regenerative inside of my soul, where the kindness doesn't run out.
I'm going to say this though,
Oh my goodness.
that you had just spent several years in New York.
Yeah.
In one of the most unkind, demeaning, destructive environments. And you're an incredibly kind, gracious, gentle, compassionate human being. You went through some pain. You went through some trauma. Then you spent a few years in New York, almost in a reacclimation spiritual environment, because you found a church there where you were rediscovering your faith. But the problem is the culture was a very unkind, mean, cruel, demeaning, destructive culture. And so then the spiritual leader that you were under, you're, serving and being, in a sense, mentored by, was teaching you that greatness and kindness were direct opposites. They could not exist together, could not coexist. So I would say a huge part of it, when you came back, I experienced you incredibly broken, and the toxicity of that culture got into your soul. And a huge part of the decompression, I'm going to say decontamination of that culture, was getting that toxicity out of your soul.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a unique experience, right? It's not something we've really talked about too often.
Never really publicly.
We've never said names. We've never talked about the organization. But, people who know my story know that I had spent a year there. Also, while I was working at St. Laurent.
Yeah.
And it was very much so this contrasting reality, because I was with a crew at YSL who were all, like the president of the company was a believer, and there was one other guy who believed in Jesus, but everyone else, Hindu, atheist, Jewish, I think we had
a Muslim?
Yeah, she was an intern, and I mean, my boss was Jane or Jane. It's a Hindu, it's the other Hindu religion. Yeah. And I remember when I got hired, she became like my big sister. And we're still friends to this day. And the culture that she created at this company, there was a lot more bad language, or maybe the equal amount of bad language.
I don't believe they can kill anything.
They don't believe they can kill anything.
Yeah.
No, I think,
They're very pacifist.
Very peaceful.
Yeah.
And now she's married to an incredibly cool man and has a beautiful baby. And she's like a hero of mine in my life, because she was really, I think I had gotten invited to church and really had a lot of life change, and then was really brought around a lot of toxic people and in a toxic environment. And then on the other side, God really kind of gave me like a counterweight, because when I decided that I was not going to serve as much, because I realized that this was pretty bad, that I was working for free 70, 80 hours a week, that I needed to go and get a job, and did that. And then was working for these incredible people who didn't understand church, but would come with me sometimes, and then really loved you, because you would come in and say hi. And then really helped me understand that these people were setting the standard of kindness. These people were setting the standard of compassion and looking out for each other and wisdom. And and an openness, because they were far more open. They flew into LA and came to Mosaic with me, with you, remember?
Yep.
And
I remember.
And they loved it. And there are people who check in on it now. And for me, Roma was the example of kindness, with being ruthless, because she was a killer businesswoman, but also leading and engaging with a team that was so beautifully kind. And she had a counterpart and a boss named Gwen, and she was phenomenal and always engaging and always equipping and always pursuing like excellence, with this idea of let's have fun. We're selling luxury goods. Like, let's have fun.
Yeah.
You know, and as empty or as meaningful as that can be, they brought a really unique perspective. And you really have, you know, Mosaic was really healing for me, you know, coming back and being a mess, and people really surrounding me, people like Joe Smith, people like you, people like Emerson Nowotny, and even Hank Fortner, and guys who were around for a short time or for a long time, but really gave me a shot at just going, we don't even know what's wrong with you right now, because I don't think I knew how to verbalize it. I remember when Mariah called me after seeing one of the documentaries going, I didn't know what you went through, you know, and I'm not a victim, but it contaminates a great word. You're too close to like the nuclear fusion, right? To these like toxic radiation, and you carry that with you, and it seeps into your bloodstream. And what you don't realize is that you become really toxic. And so I own it now. You know, I ran into a young man. It was crazy. I was at dinner in New York City, and I was this with one of my good friends, and she was like, you know, you probably grew up with a lot of trauma. And I was like, yeah, it is what it is. You call it trauma. Back then, you just called it like, I don't know, cynicism. Childhood. You just called it the 90s.
Yeah.
And I was telling her about a young man who we had a falling out, and he went through a really hard time mentally, and he was really upset with my family, and there might have been threats, and there was some concern and some worry.
There were threats of violence. Yeah.
And I ran into him in a restaurant, and he comes from behind the bar and was like, oh my gosh, this is my restaurant. And I'm nervous because he's an intense man. Yeah. And
military background.
And I'd only really experienced him kind, but he was struggling and there was some stuff, and he grabs me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been doing jujitsu for like 3 months, like 2 months. I'm gonna die right now. And he just goes, I am so sorry for who I was 10 years ago. Please forgive me. And at first he introduced himself. He's like, you remember me? And I'm like, of course I remember you. You know, a good looking, handsome, strong man. Yeah. I remember him. And he's haunted me for a decade, right? And he asked for forgiveness. And it was one of those beautiful moments where I was like, hey, I was so imperfect. Like, thank you. And please forgive me. And it was one of those crazy moments of running into each other. I remember calling you, being like, you were at an event with your friends, and I was like, you're like, yeah, like it's so loud in the back, you're at a sporting event. And I'm like, dude, I just ran into this guy. And you were like, are you okay? Are you safe? Is everything fine? And I was like, no, it was a beautiful healing moment. And so when I look at it and I go, now 10 years later, I'm trying to make amends for the moments in which I messed up so badly. And maybe that's like the healing power of kindness, in receiving it from other people, going, wow, that's forgiveness now. I'm able to let that go. Now the kindness that I've received overpowers the trauma or the toxicity I've experienced. And whether that's the case or not, being able to get to that place, finding and identifying the cause and effect, is really something in a journey that I encourage everyone to go on, you know?
And by the way?
Yeah.
What you just described as wisdom.
Thank you.
And it's learning from your mistakes, owning your mistakes, taking responsibility for them, and choosing to take the steps to become a better human being.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. We have to wrap this up.
Yeah.
But I want to tease the next part 2 of this.
Oh.
Because you made a statement that said the destruction to wisdom is personal and immediate pleasure. And so if you feel comfortable enough, I want to go into that the next time we come together.
Yeah, but I'm going to make everybody have deferred gratification.
This is perfect. It's a cliffhanger. So I'm going to close this out.
Okay.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Battle Ready podcast, which is the McManus podcast, which is living on Erwin Raphael McManus's YouTube page, which is incredible. So hit subscribe, share this page, and Austin and our team of me and Austin and Rowan have been sharing shorts almost every day of the week. So if you want to check out some of our clips, go to YouTube. You can also follow us on Instagram, The Battle Ready Podcast. You can also go to Spotify, The Battle Ready Podcast, Apple Music, Google, all of the different things, Amazon Podcast, and check us out. Rate and review us on Apple. I want to break 1,000 and hit 5 stars on Spotify. Don't you dare hit 4. You hit 4, we're gonna have a problem. But we're back, we're better than ever, and I'm grateful for the times that you allow us the space to create content and live our lives and come back to it. But I love you, Dad. Thank you so much.
I love you too. All right. Have a great week, guys.